Hello, everybody. Welcome into The Cycle. I am Ryan Wormeli, joined today by Mike Maher. Maher, we're talking to baseball. It's the middle of May. I don't really have anything specific to bring up. How's it going?
Well, then it'll be a great show. It'll be a short show if you don't have anything specific to talk about. I wish my Red Sox were better. They just got swept by the Tigers. That's not great, especially for a team that could use a few wins. And my fantasy teams are all over the place. Some are doing really well. Some are doing really, really poorly. And hopefully everyone out there's teams are doing much better than mine are.
Yeah, we're not here to talk about how our real-life teams are doing. As a Red Sox fan and an Orioles fan, there's nothing I want to talk about less than the Baltimore Orioles at this very moment, although I am going to talk about some of them in today's show. You talk about your fantasy teams, some doing well, some doing very poorly. Speaking of doing very poorly, let's dive right into rounding the bases. And we're starting off with taking the L. Who can we admit we were wrong about this year? We are now over a month and a half into the season, Mayor. It is time that we can start saying, okay, this is no longer strictly a small sample size. Obviously, to a degree it is. You know, baseball is a long-term, large sample size sport. But, you know, we're getting to that point where we can really kind of start to reevaluate what we were thinking about before the season and say, like, this is the new normal for some of these guys. Or at the very least, something we need to be reacting to and thinking deeper about. For me, and I'll just bring it up first because I talked about the Orioles, Adley Rutschman. I was extraordinarily high on him as the best catcher in fantasy coming into the season. I thought we were in line for a very locked-in Adley season where he was going to take the leap and be, like, not just the best catcher, but, like, clearly the best catcher in fantasy and one of the best overall hitters in fantasy, worth a top 50 pick in drafts. I was very, very into Adley this year. And, you know, I don't want to, like, try and justify being wrong because he's been very bad. There is a lot of underlying data that says he has been hitting the ball better than his numbers would suggest. So I do want to give him some degree of credit there and say there has been an element of bad luck, and I'm willing to recognize that. But this is now basically a year-long slump because the second half of last year, he was very bad. This year, he has been worse. A 197 batting average. His on-base percentage is under 300. His OPS is 623. He has 4 home runs, but 2 of those came in March. I mean, he has been one of the worst hitters in baseball. He's still been batting like third or cleanup in a lot of lineups, so he's getting opportunities to figure it out. But average exit velocity, 36th percentile. Barrel rate, 49th percentile. Hard hit rate, 28th percentile. Bat speed, 25th percentile. His expected numbers for things like WOBA and batting average are
you already
much better.
named all the bad ones. Everything else is great.
I'm highlighting that the ball is not coming off the bat very well, but what he is doing very well is he's not chasing. His whiff rate, his chase rate are elite. So he's not, like, striking out a ton. It's his lowest strikeout rate of his career, actually. Walk rate, roughly in line with everything else. But it's just been so bad, and it's been like a year of this, and I'm willing to take maybe not the L saying, like, you should drop him, but I'm willing to take the L on him being the best catcher in fantasy.
I think it's too early to take the L on him. Maybe he won't catch up to the best catcher in fantasy. You know, he's not going to be Carson Kelly. Who is, you know? Who could be Carson Kelly? But like you said, like, a lot of his expected numbers are much better. He's batting 191. His expected batting average is 279. It's so much higher. And I think the Orioles as an organization and as, like, a lineup are just kind of, like, messy right now, and he's just caught up in that. His swinging strike rate is actually down pretty significantly. It was 6.8% last year. It's 4.5% this year. Hard hit numbers are up. Barrel numbers are up. Fly ball numbers are about the same. Home run to fly ball are about the same. 211 BABIP is not doing him any favors. So I think he's, like, in a slump, but he's also getting a ton of bad luck here, and that the numbers are going to normalize to the point where he'll be, like, a rosterable, that's hard to say, catcher. It's probably too late to be the best catcher in fantasy as you were hoping for, but I think he could easily finish, like, top 8 with if he turns it around soon.
The Orioles as an organization are a red flag for me with him. Like, I have a lot of problems with their approach at their plate. I don't understand why they're not firing Brandon Hyde. I also don't understand why they're not firing at least their hitting coach. I mean, they need to completely revamp the approach from this organization. They have seen over 1,000 fewer pitches this season collectively as a team than the Red Sox have. Like, they are not taking pitches. It is impacting them. Adley, on the other hand, is consistently taking pitches right down the middle. Like, I don't know what it is that's going on with this team, but the guys who should be stars are not hitting well, and Adley is right at the forefront of that. I'm really nervous. And it scares me that this has been a trend multiple years now of getting worse. 2023, his OPS was 809. 2024, his OPS was 709. 2025, his OPS is 623. I get that there's some bad luck baked in there. I get that the expected numbers are better. They weren't really in the second half of last year. This year, it does seem like more bad luck than playing badly. I think there was some injury stuff in the second half of last year. But we're coming up on like almost a year of a really, really poor performer. And I feel like I was out over my skis about him.
He's also older than I thought. He was like an old prospect, and I would have expected him to be like 24, and he is
27.
Almost, yeah.
I talk about this all the time. In 2019 was screaming from the mountaintops. Everybody said, well, Adley's the most obvious consensus number one pick we've had in years. I was like, they need to take Bobby Witt Jr. because it was year one of this half-decade rebuild. I was like, by the time Adley is playing at a major league level, at a high level, and the team is good around him, he's going to be in his late 20s. And that's basically what's happened. And I was like saying this to anybody who would listen to I love Adley, like the player. He's been a great representative for the city, kind of a face of the rebuild for a lot of those years. But I sure would rather have had Bobby Witt. I said that the day of the draft, I would have rather had Witt for no other reason than the age. I just thought it was poor planning. But you know, that's a conversation for another day. But he is sneaky older, so like there's not that, and like he did not sign an extension with the team. I think that might be a mistake. I mean, if he continues to hit poorly, another year older as a catcher, caught a lot of games in college. Like, yes, a mistake for him to not have taken the sure thing extension and kind of waited out. You know, sometimes these players bet on themselves and it works out tremendously well. Other times, your value is not what you thought it was. Maybe. I mean, I still think Adley would get a huge contract if he wanted to sign, but I don't know if it would be as big as he had kind of anticipated early on, given the age and position and the performance. So the other guy I threw out there is Devin Williams. I think one of my bold predictions on the show was that he could get like Cy Young votes this year. That's clearly not happening.
That's a tough one.
You know, it was a bold prediction for a reason. It wasn't intended to be a gimme. He's just been awful. I mean, he's been really. His expected ERA is 5.10, which is 3 runs higher than his actual ERA, or excuse me, 3 runs lower, 3 runs better is what I should say, than his actual ERA of 8.36. He's been really, really bad. And I would imagine there's a path to him getting better, the second half of the season. But so far, it sure looks like a big fat L that I need to take.
Yeah, I don't even have too much to add there because, I mean, no one could have really predicted this because he was so good and then going to an environment where he should have gotten a ton of save opportunities, and it just could not be going worse for him right now. And like for him to already be like not the lockdown, not like lock, but like the locked in closer for the Yankees, and we're in mid-May, isn't like no one could have predicted that.
The walk rate is a little high. I mean, it's pretty high, but it's usually been around 12%. It's in 16%, so it's very bad. The alarming number is the strikeout rate, because you look at the last few years since 2020,
and the whip.
It's been 53, 38, 40, 37, 43. This year it's 23.5% strikeout rate. He's just not striking out anybody. I mean, the whip's 179. I mean, the numbers are all
almost
bad,
double. It's almost double what it was last year. His whip.
Yeah, and the strikeout rate is almost half what it was last year. I mean, the ERA is about 7 times what it was last year. He hasn't had an ERA over 2 since 2021, and it's currently over 8. So, I am willing to accept the L. I have Devin Williams in a lot of places. I don't really know what to do with him because I don't really want to drop him, but, and I invested a lot in him on draft day, and that was a mistake. So, those are kind of my two. I wanted to highlight Adley and Devin Williams. Who you got?
So I wanted to give a few here because, as I told you before the show, though, I'm taking the L on one, but I'm also going to kind of like pull it back a little bit, and I don't want to like, not fulfill my obligation to the segment. But my first answer was Jeffrey Springs, just because I was really high on him coming into the season. I thought he was someone you could take mid to late as just like a really sneaky high up. Like this is a guy who, talking about Cy Young votes. It's a guy who got Cy Young votes in the past, and he got hurt. We just kind of forgot about him. He went from the Rays to the A's, and I just had really high hopes for him and thought he was just like I thought he could be in that like league winner category, like someone you could take like pretty late on draft day who has ace upside. I didn't think we were gonna get like SP1 upside, but I thought like we could get like SP2 upside from Jeffrey Springs, and he got off to a really bad start. And part of it was we kind of no one really knew what to expect in that ballpark they were going to. It had kind of the same dimensions as the Oakland Coliseum. And the ball's flying out of there. So immediately some of the pitchers that I was targeting on draft day, like Springs, like Luis Severino, don't feel as great about them anymore because that home ballpark is just not great. However, I will say, to pull back the L a little bit, in May, he's been really, really good. And I don't necessarily think this is him turning around. I think this is just kind of like a mini hot streak in what is probably going to be an overall disappointing season. But in May, if I will scroll down to where he is, 3 starts, 18 innings, 1.50 ERA. Now, that only comes with 9 strikeouts. So 9 strikeouts in 18 innings. Not great. But 1.5 ERA, 197 average against, and 256 WOBA in May. All really, really good numbers. For the whole season, still a 4.27 ERA with expected numbers that are even higher than 4.27. And that 4.27 comes after 3 really, really good starts in May, which tells you where his ERA was before that. So I think it's still an L given my high hopes for him, but there is at least a glimmer of hope right now that he's pitching much better.
Yeah, Springs is somebody I don't have a lot of this year. I liked him a lot a couple of years ago, like prior to the injury, and I just didn't feel that confident kind of investing in him, given how little he had pitched the last couple of years, and that there were some question marks with the ballpark. But I have always liked the pitcher himself when healthy. So I, was somewhat on the same page with you. I wasn't expecting borderline SP1 upside or anything like that. But, disappointing for him. Where would you rank him rest of season?
Like as in overall pitchers?
Yeah.
Let's pull up my rankings and see where he is. He's not someone I'm like banking on. Like he could be a free agent in your league, and that means he's probably outside of the top.
Actually, that's a good point. What is his roster percentage? Pulling it up
in a
here.
Second. I have him at exactly 100 right
now. Oh, you have him 100 pitcher?
Pitcher.
Yeah, okay. I just want to clarify.
SP100.
I assume that's what you meant.
He's 23% Yahoo, 7% ESPN.
Yeah. Okay. Who else do you have?
Easy one, well documented on this show. Mike Trout, someone I have rostered everywhere.
No, you were in on Mike Trout this year?
Yeah, and
I had no idea.
I mean, it's an L in the sense that it went poorly quickly, but I mean that was the risk.
What do you mean in the sense that no, it is an L. The direct reason that everybody was avoiding him happened. That is an L.
Fair.
And when is he coming back? By the way, I'm sure they're making a lot of definitive statements about it.
Yeah, no timetable. He's got a boo-boo, but no timetable for him to return from that boo-boo. But again, they were not concerned about it when it happened. Which to me, like I was watching the game when he left, and I mean maybe there's something I missed, and I'll look dumb for saying this, but and I know like medical issues like bone bruises like don't always like happen in the same way, but like he left the game with like a lower body injury, and then eventually it came out that it was like a bone bruise, but like I don't remember anything happening to him that would like cause a bone. It's not like he got like drilled by a pitch and it was like so bad that it caused a bone bruise. It was like he left with like some like knee discomfort and they're considering like a bone bruise. And I know there's other ways to get bone bruises, but like that's concerning that like there's nothing pointing to it. And then they said they weren't concerned. And then he went on the IL and they were like, oh, he should be fine. And then like, we're now 2 weeks in and he's like doing some light baseball activities. I'm like, if this is just a bone bruise, what are we doing here? And it's just like, I posted the other day, like this is very concerning that there's just like no information. And it's like, we've seen this before with Mike Trout. It's like a nothing burger turns into like he's gone forever. So yeah, not great.
Yeah. I mean, that's a straightforward one. Who's next?
Yeah. And like you said before, I forget it was when you were on the show or when Kelly was here, it was like almost like to the day last year when he went down too. Like at the end of April, like the last day of April. The other one is very similar to your Devin Williams one. I rarely go closer early, but in a few leagues this year, I wanted to kind of lock in a top tier closer and thought that the price was right to get Emmanuel Clase. And that's gone even worse than Devin Williams in some ways. I mean, like the numbers are technically not as bad as Devin Williams, but he already lost the job like a couple weeks before Devin Williams. And it's not clear if he's going to get it back, in part because I think the Guardians have a couple other good options in the late innings. I think the plan is still to get him back and have him be the closer. But boy, it is not going good. He has 4.91 ERA. Expected numbers are all much better, so there is like some signs he's like turning this around. But
I'm more confident in him kind of bouncing back for the rest of the year than I am Devin Williams.
You think so? Why? Why is that?
So some of the expected numbers are better, and like at the very least, like Devin Williams, you can say like, well, he's with a new team, a new ballpark. Like you can point to things that changed that maybe are hampering him for some reason. Like I don't know that that's the case here. I mean, it's just he's just pitching worse than I expected. So
I will say Clase has like technically already kind of gotten the job back. He has been converting saves more recently. He is usable in like some of those leagues, and the numbers have been better over the last like week.
I invested heavily in our Fantasy Pros Insiders Baseball League. It's a head-to-head categories, and I decided to go very, very heavy on pitching, both starters and relievers. And I have both of these. I have both of our relievers on here.
Wow. Well, at least Clase is like usable now. You know, maybe taking the L is too early because he has kind of like. I was worried when he first lost the job. They have Hunter Gaddis, and they have I forget the other reliever who actually got the job temporarily ahead of Hunter Gaddis. But I was like, oh, he might just not get this job back. But he has recently. He hasn't like looked that great, but he has been at least getting saves, so you can use him in that way.
Well, speaking of the Guardians, we are now giving away a Jose Ramirez signed Guardians jersey, courtesy of our friends at pristineauction.com. All you have to do to enter is to subscribe to the Fantasy Pros MLB YouTube channel right now. Drop a comment below on any video, and that is it. We'll be announcing one lucky winner right here on the channel, so make sure to turn on those notifications so you can know when new videos are up and to claim your prize. Let's go to our second topic here of rounding the bases. Mayor, Jose Altuve, is he cooked? Is he washed? Is he finished being an elite fantasy contributor? His OPS is under 700 right now. He is batting .256. His OBP is just .302. His slugging is .369. He has 4 home runs and 3 stolen bases. And I don't know if you have looked at this. I put it in the notes. His Statcast data is horrific. It is absolutely abysmal. Fifth percentile, expected WOBA, 12th percentile expected batting average, 11th expected slugging, first percentile average exit velocity. His average exit velocity is 84.4 miles an hour. He's also first percentile in sweet spot rate. His bat speed is low. I mean, it's all blue. His chase rate is up. His barrel rate is down. I mean, it has just been really, really abysmal across the board. He is 35 now. Is this a great longtime elite player taking that step down? Do you see this as still early season small sample size? I mean, the underlying data is just so poor that I don't know how you can have any confidence in him at this age.
Yeah, this is almost another L I can take. Not that I was like heavily invested in him this year, but I actually kind of predicted this downfall like 2 or 3 years ago and ended up being like way too early. Just kind of banking on a player because, you know, he's very small and just kind of like banking on, I didn't expect a player that small to kind of age very gracefully, especially on like the power side. And he had dealt with some lower body injuries. I was like, well, if the speed kind of flounders and the power might not be there, like how valuable is he for fantasy? And of course, he's still been really good the last 2 or 3 years. But now maybe it's because I do have a couple shares of him. I didn't like aggressively target him, but I do have him in a couple places, in part because I liked the idea of where he was going and then he was going to be outfield, infield, you know, like outfield, second base eligible. Walk rate is fine. Strikeout rate is about the same. Batting .256 is like well below. He's a career .305 hitter. If he's batting .256 with an expected batting average that's 30 points lower than that, so that's not great. The hard hit numbers are about the same. Swinging strike is actually lower. Barrel percentage way down. So like you said, there are some like concerning underlying numbers there. And we've kind of talked about the same thing with like Christian Walker and like Marcus Semien is like, these are like much older players. And it's hard to tell early in a season is like you said, is this just a small sample size? Is it a slow start? Or are we seeing the cliff? Is this just kind of like the new like version of this player as they've gotten, they're in their mid 30s now?
I don't know what the answer to that question is, honestly. Like, if it is kind of the new normal with Jose Altuve, or if it is, hey, this guy's a star, we should have trust in him to figure it out. I tend to lean towards the negative side of that answer and thinking that this is somebody that I would sell low on, for example, if you can, and I would not want to buy low on. I mean, again, like the numbers are all bad and the expected data is worse. That's a pretty bad formula for a guy in his mid-30s. And, we shouldn't let the players of 20 years ago when steroids were rampant, color our perspective. Like mid-30s is a very reasonable time to fall off a cliff, right? This is not unheard of physically if that is in fact what's happening. So, and it's not like the Houston lineup is, what it was in its heyday either, to kind of help bump them up with some of the counting stats too. So, yeah, I mean, I think it's a pretty sad thing to watch. I mean, unless you hate the Astros, which would be totally justified. But it's sad if you have enjoyed watching Altuve over the years. But yeah,
are you willing to buy low on him right now?
I'm not. I mean, I would pick him up if somebody dropped him, but like I'm not giving up anything. I would trade, from our conversation last week, I would trade Javi Baez for him, but like pretty much not much more than that. I want nothing to do with Altuve, because the problem with Altuve too is if you have him, you're going to start him. Like you don't want to be the guy who sits Altuve when he finally gets it going again. And so every week he's just going to be dragging you down unless he really does figure it out. So like I would buy him for the absolute barest minimum price, literally free. Anything beyond that, no, I have no interest in buying.
His counting stats aren't that bad. Like,
but his underlying stuff is even worse.
Right, but he hasn't killed you in your lineup yet. He's still hitting 250, 4 home runs, 3 stolen bases. It's not. I don't know.
Bad. I mean, I have him in our head-to-head points deep keeper league, and in that league, he is. If you look at the last several years, his points per game in this format have been. This is going back like a decade. 4.5, 4.5, 3.5, 4. 2.5, that was 2020. 4, 4.5, 3. This year it's barely over 2. It's like it's a pretty steep drop. And that's just one scoring format, but it's a pretty steep drop. Yeah. He's been caught stealing as many times as he's stolen a base. Like the speed might not be there anymore. I mean, it's just his sprint speed is 46th percentile this year.
What is it normally?
I don't know. Actually, I'm looking at it. But I mean, usually he can get you a handful of stolen bases. At least in the past ones. I guess that's actually pretty normal in line for him. So I take back that as a criticism. I mean, the last couple of years at least, it's pretty normal. Like into his 30s. Earlier on, it was different, of course.
Where do you think he is on FantasyPros VBR, like overall? Like, and I know that's a difficult gauge. So like, let's say above or below 150. Top 150 players, hitters, top 150 hitters.
I would guess maybe in the like 130 to 40 range.
Very close. You're getting warmer. You want to try and get closer?
145.
Ooh, 146.
Close. Yeah. I mean, again, it's the counting stats being down from usual, coupled with the underlying stats being much, much worse. Do you want to buy him?
I would buy low.
Okay. Yeah, we see it differently then.
It depends on what the price is. Like, I'm always willing to buy very low. But
like I said, I'll buy free, but I don't want to buy low.
But I figure if he was last year, he batted 295, 20 home runs, 22 stolen bases. Even if he bats like 260, 15 home runs, 15 stolen bases, that's still very valuable to me.
I don't know that he's going to get there though.
We'll see.
Yeah, we will see. Let's go to our news, notes, and injuries. We can run through these quickly.
So real quick, some of the top news. Shane McClanahan still feeling discomfort in that pitching arm with that nerve issue. Don't love that. I've been kind of stashing him in a couple places, and I feel like it might be time to just kind of cut loose. It's if he's like not even, he just recently started throwing, and he's immediately feeling discomfort. We don't really have, like, it's a nerve issue. It's like hard to kind of like, it's, you know, it's not like a torn labrum where you like know he's done, or like a muscle strain where you know it's going to be like a few weeks. We don't really have a ton of info to go on like a nerve issue. And, you know, if you've still been stashing him, it's now mid-May. You know, I know you have him somewhere. Are you just continuing to hold on?
Yeah, I don't. Yes, I mean, it's easy enough to just stick him on an IL spot. And I haven't, the places where I have him, I haven't felt like I've really needed to. You know, I just got to cut bait to make room for some other like hot shot call up or something. So I've been comfortable just sitting on him and hoping.
Well, how about in this scenario? I have him in TGFBI where there's no IL spots. It's a deep league, you know, 15 teams, 5 outfielders. He's just been taking up a bench spot for me. And it's not like there's a ton of great players available, like you said, in free agencies. He's just been sitting on my bench. But I don't know how much longer I can just have an empty bench spot.
Yeah, but I mean, like, that's the thing is like, who are you getting in a deep league like that? Who are you picking up to replace him with that has that kind of upside? I'd rather just sit on the upside. I mean, if there's a scenario where it's like you desperately need to pick somebody up, like let's say you have, let's say you have Freddie Freeman and he goes on the IL and you don't want to drop Freddie Freeman, but you don't have a backup first baseman. You desperately need to pick him up, and there's like somebody good on the waivers. Like, yeah, sure. Like a specific scenario like that, I'd be open to it. But like in general, I'm not just looking to drop him for the sake of having another bench spot. Like, I don't care that much about having one more bench spot if whoever I pick up is not even going to be really in contention to start for me.
How about this? Would you rather stash Shane McClanahan or Shane Bieber? And I can give you an update on Shane Bieber. He just recently started like throwing off a mound. They say he's still a ways away from returning from Tommy John surgery, but at least with him, I have hope that he could be back in like a month. Whereas Shane McClanahan just might be a nothing.
I would probably rather be stashing McClanahan, but I mean, obviously, ideally, it's neither. But but if I'm keeping a bench spot for one of these kind of high upside.
Well, what about in a league like that? Like, would you drop McClanahan for Bieber?
I think I'd rather have McClanahan in that league. Because I guys coming back from Tommy John, I'm like, even when they're back, I don't really have any expectations. Like if and when McClanahan returns, I'm kind of hoping that we'll get something out of him. Like Bieber, he could return, and it could be like just such a limited role that it doesn't really matter anyway.
Fair. Okay, so we can go quickly. Tanner Houck allowed 11 earned runs for the second time this year.
Yeah. Is that pulling a Houck or is that pulling an Aaron Nola?
That's true. He got off to like a decent start, then he got shelled for 11 earned runs, and then he looked kind of good, and people picked him back up, and he hurt them again. So it's kind of brutal that, especially in like if you think about it in like roto terms, you probably rostered Houck, he gave up 11 earned runs, you dropped him, missed his good starts, and then if you picked him up again, you got hit with 11 earned runs again. So there are probably people out there that have like missed his 2 or 3 good starts and just have 22 earned runs on the books thanks to Tanner Houck. Lucas Giolito, I don't know what to make of him. He had a good start, a really bad start, and then another good start. I've seen a lot of optimism for him in this space. I kind of don't see it. When I want, like, something just looks off to me. Even I was listening to another show, I think it was the CBS guys recently, where they talked about him looking better and his velocity on his fastball was up. His velocity in his fastball was up, but I was watching the game. He was also really struggling to locate it, which tells me he was maybe overthrowing to kind of get that velocity back up. And he just didn't look that sharp to me despite the good numbers. One of the bigger news items is the Dodgers are calling up catching prospect Dalton Rushing. And the more important thing is it sounds like he's a very top, he's a very highly rated prospect. He's like maybe their top prospect. And the good thing there is that he's a catching prospect, but should be in the lineup in other ways. Like he can play a little first base, he can play a little outfield, and so there's a chance he's not just the backup to Will Smith. He's someone who's in the lineup several times a week.
So I thought I saw a quote from the Dodgers that they were thinking he was going to catch twice a week, and then like kind of find other at bats elsewhere. I didn't come away from that quote thinking like it was going to be enough to be like worth starting in fantasy. Did you kind of read that differently?
I read it as he's going to get enough opportunities, and I think he's a good enough prospect where if he hits, he'll be in the lineup more. And they have enough injuries and enough opportunities. I mean, granted, once they get healthy, if he hasn't been hitting, he's gone.
Yeah.
But for me, especially in like a 2-catcher league, if you can get a prospect a catcher, and even in a 1-catcher league, if you can afford to like kind of stash him, I just think he's a really good prospect. He's a really good hitter, and he can find his way into the lineup in other ways, especially because like Freddie Freeman is incredibly hot right now, but it also like there was a report that he gets like an hour or more of treatment on his ankle every day, so like he's just like scraping it together like health wise, and like he's the kind of player who if they have like one more injury, he could be an everyday player at the catcher position. Bryce Miller to the IL. He's another player I considered for like taking the L on. I wasn't like historically high on Bryce Miller, but I have a ton of shares of him this year because I liked where the price was going. So he has not looked good, and he has gone to the IL. Jose Quintana. Everyone was worried about holding the bag when he turns back into Jose Quintana, but apparently he's just going to the IL. He had a shoulder issue, and then they said he was fine. He was going to start Saturday, and now he's going to the IL. So like not a huge name for fantasy, but someone that we've talked about on the show a bunch recently. That's someone we've been streaming because he just keeps pitching well. Ronald Acuna began a rehab assignment and is playing the outfield. So I was kind of hoping that happened like 2 or 3 weeks ago, but it's happening now. And so that's very exciting, especially for someone who's stashing him. And Spencer Strider recently threw a sim game and could be returning as early as this week. It hasn't been decided yet. Maybe by this weekend we'll know more if he's going to go on a rehab assignment or just kind of come right back to the Braves. It did sound or like actually I read it, so I will say that I read that his velocity started out fine in a sim game that he threw, but as he went on, the velocity kind of dipped a little bit, which I think can be pretty normal for someone working their way back. But it is something worth noting that they might have seen that kind of fatigue, or because they didn't seem like they were concerned for like injury reasons. They just thought he needed to work back into like game shape. But worth noting that his velocity was down, so it's possible they send him back out for a rehab assignment. But he could return as early as this week. I've seen some sites projecting him to start as early as Tuesday.
Last topic here on Rounding the Bases. I don't have a ton on this, but I did think it was worth mentioning just because it's a big story in baseball. Pete Rose and Shoeless Joe Jackson. What's that?
So it's a hot topic. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. But
no, you're okay.
Highly debated in the space right now.
Yeah. Pete Rose and Shoeless Joe Jackson now eligible for the Hall of Fame. They've been kind of reinstated into baseball. The line of thinking from Manfred was this was a lifetime ban. These guys are obviously no longer with us, some more recently than others. And, they're now kind of eligible. And I didn't really have a ton of strong feelings about it. I expected to have a ton of strong feelings about it. I am somebody who tends to care about the Hall of Fame and the history of the sport and think about this stuff a lot. But as I sat down to think, like, what do I actually really want to say about this on the show? I really didn't have much. I'm kind of curious what your opinion is. I don't find myself feeling strongly. Like, I do think it's kind of crappy to, like, punish a guy for his whole life and then when he's gone be like, okay, well, now you'll get the benefit and the value of being enshrined in the Hall of Fame.
That's my take.
That it's crappy to wait till they're gone. Yeah. But at the same time, like Pete Rose, like he Hall of Fame player, yes, but like even aside from the gambling, like by all accounts, like wasn't a great person. So like it's also hard for me to feel too like sympathetic for somebody like who maybe doesn't carry himself in that kind of Hall of Fame way. Now there's a lot of like bad people in the Hall of Fame, so I'm not saying that should be like a disqualifying thing, but it was hard for me to get up in arms about it, I guess. And frankly, like obviously, like I'm aware of who Shoeless Joe Jackson is and like the scandal from back then, but that was long enough ago that like it's not like I have all the details on that kind of story or anything like that. So like I
don't think anyone does.
Well, yeah. So like that one's like a weird one to even like weigh in on and like have a strong opinion about. But like the Pete Rose one is like, yeah, I think it's kind of like a crappy way to do it by Major League Baseball, but ultimately, like I don't feel that strongly either way. Like, and it's not like he's in the Hall of Fame. Like, he still needs to get voted in by the writers, and I genuinely don't know like what they're gonna do with that.
Yeah, I'm pretty similar in that I didn't have like very strong feelings. I saw a lot of very strong feelings. Like it's ridiculous that they even consider this. I think it's in a different bucket than the steroid guys who like I'm pretty on board with not letting some of them in just because like what they did directly resulted in their numbers, and so it's kind of hard to be like, hey, like you're one of our best players, but also like you were a robot because you cheated.
Are you just very quickly? Are you? I don't think we've ever talked about this. Are you somebody who thinks that Barry Bonds shouldn't be in the Hall of Fame?
I have very complicated feelings about that. I'm like I could go either way. I mean, like on one hand, like he very clearly did steroids, but on the other hand, like he kind of never got caught. Like he never actually like there's no like proof they did steroids. So like it's kind of like
he also was a Hall of Famer before the steroids.
Right.
Let's save Barry Bonds. Well, for a week where we don't have a ton of great topics, let's do Barry Bonds in the future. I was just curious, but
sure.
yeah, Pete Rose.
Yeah. In this case, I thought it was like, you're either gonna take a stance and not let him in the Hall of Fame or make him eligible, or like if you're gonna do it while he's alive. Like they waited until he died and they're like, all right, now he can be in the Hall of Fame, and I'm like, all right, like that's kind of crappy. And I've seen some people talk on the space like, like if you're permanently ineligible, like how are you like eligible now? And I'm like, I feel like, for like in the case of like Shoeless Joe Jackson, like, all right, like you're not permanently ineligible, but like maybe 70 years after you die, you can get into the Hall of Fame. Like, is that a harsh enough punishment for what you did? Which like for his scandal, like that's a big one. Like they threw the World Series. Yeah. There's no real evidence that he did because his numbers are really good in that World Series. And he was kind of like a not very smart guy, apparently. So there are theories out there that like he wasn't in on it, even though he kind of knew and was like still playing his hardest. Because I forget what the numbers are, but he batted over 300 with no errors in that game. I'm like, or in that series. But like you kind of get it. Like, okay, like this is a major thing. You can't throw a World Series and then get into the Hall of Fame. But the Pete Rose one was like, it's been debated for like decades, and he's kind of like gone back and forth with like multiple commissioners like in baseball. And it seemed like at one point it almost felt like it was like me dealing with my son, where they were like, just say sorry and we'll let you in the Hall of Fame. And he was like, no, I refuse. And it almost seemed like you said, like if he carried himself better and was like more apologetic and like worked with Major League Baseball, he probably would have gotten in, but he just kind of acted like a jerk about it. But I do think it's kind of weird that they were like, okay, like you're not getting in the Hall of Fame, and then you die, and they were like, okay, maybe now.
Yeah, like I guess that's my thought is like if you want to dig your heels in and say Pete Rose will never be in the Hall of Fame, I can understand that thinking. Like at the end of the day, it is a museum, and it's really hard to tell the story of Major League Baseball without its all-time hits leader. So like I tend to be on the side of letting people in, as long as their on-field play warrants it. I'm a pretty small hall guy in terms of the performance threshold you need to get in, but I'm a big hall guy in terms of other stuff around that because it is a museum at the end of the day. But if you want to like take a hard stance on it, I'm okay with that. It just feels kind of cruel to say, well, now that he's dead, we're gonna lift this. Like at the end of the day, like it doesn't matter that much, right? Like it's like life is short, right? We get to kind of celebrate this fun, silly game in a really meaningful way, and I love it, and I take it very seriously. But at the end of the day, it is just a game, and you're gonna like punish a guy who like basically gave his whole life to this sport, and punish him in a way that says we will give this to you, but not when you are around to recognize and enjoy it. It just feels kind of harsh. Like again, it feels harsher to do this than it would be to just never let him in.
Yeah, it's an odd move from an odd commissioner who I don't see. I don't
that
agree with
that is also another conversation for another episode. Yeah. is our thoughts on Manfred. All right, we'll go ahead and wrap up this on that. Be sure to check out our other episodes of the cycle this week. We've got 2 more coming your way. We've got some buys and sells, some waiver picks, some pitching streamers, all that good stuff as per usual. That's both on video and on audio. For this episode, for Mayor, I'm Ryan Wormeli. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you again next time.